home equity loan is good for consolidation, and it's a substitute for an emergency fund. Debt consolidation makes sense. No, it doesn't. Truth. If you are in debt, here's an idea. If you have an emergency, the last thing you need to do is go further in debt. Dumb, 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 dumb. I'm going to put a home equity loan on instead of carrying an emergency fund, and then I'll be okay. Dumb, dumb, dumb. Myth. Debt consolidation saves interest, and you get one smaller payment. Truth. Debt consolidation is a con. That's why they call it debt consolidation. Debt consolidation typically saves little or no interest because you throw your low interest loans into the deal. You take a no interest medical bill and roll it into the deal. You take a zero interest car payment and roll it into the deal. You take all these other lower interest things and roll them into the deal, and you get the whole thing on there at 10, 11% as a second mortgage on your house, and the aggregate of all your other debt would have been a lower rate. But you never add all that up. It's just, I want one payment. It's just not convenient. It's more convenient for me to give them more money. That's what we're saying. And here's the trick. You've got to remember, you cannot borrow your way out of debt. And that's really the spirit of debt consolidation. If I could find a plan, I'll just borrow my way out. You cannot borrow your way out of debt. It's impossible to borrow your way out of debt. You can't dig your way out of a hole. If you're in a hole and you dig out the bottom, you're just going deeper. That's the deal. You got to climb out of a hole. That's how you get out. And smaller payments equal to more time in debt. I just can't handle the payments, and when I debt consolidated it, I was smart financially because I have a smaller payment. If you have a smaller payment, unless the interest rate is way smaller, then you are in debt longer. That's the only part of the variable that can work. The only way to have a smaller payment is be in debt longer. That's what brings the payments down. You're going in the wrong direction. Think. You can't borrow your way out of debt. Debt consolidation doesn't work.
So on TV, there's constantly commercials about debt consolidation, debt management plans, debt settlement plans. What's the difference between all of those?
Well, a consolidation plan is where you have consolidated all of your debt into one loan, one monthly fixed rate, fixed payment for the life of the loan. The management programs are where you actually enter into a contract with a company that will take your unsecured debts and manage a plan with your creditors. You will make payments to them for a monthly fee, and they will then pay your creditors. The third is the settlement company. This one's a big trouble, and they promise a lot of things they can't deliver. What they'll want you to do is to stop paying your debts and instead pay them a monthly fee and continue to build a savings account so that they can actually offer to settle the balance of your accounts at a much lower rate or a lower amount. It is legal. However, what will happen is all too often people will get sued because they cannot manage that account correctly. And so it's a good way to get into big trouble.
So they all sound like bad plans.
They're all bad plans.
Would you ever recommend someone to take one of those three?
No.
Yes.
No. We want people to manage their money, to be empowered, to be in control. You're your own best advocate. You can never find someone else to do this for you. And if you're having trouble, that's one thing. We'll find help. Let's get help with that and create a plan if you're not sure what to do. But what is, I think the biggest issue here is that if you work with a company like this, you didn't really solve the problem. The problem is you and being in control, being empowered, and knowing what you're doing with your money. So we need to work on that first, because this is just a symptom.
Our last myth. Debt is a tool. It should be used to create prosperity. The truth is, the borrower is slave to the lender. You know, when I ran into this, and I really started to grasp it, it was hard for me, because I got to thinking about it. Who was it taught me to borrow money? This was my college finance professor who was broke. What's wrong with that picture? A broke finance professor is like a shop teacher with missing fingers. So I have a rule. I don't take financial advice from broke people anymore. I want to do what rich people are doing. I get to be rich people. Whatever the broke people are doing, I can love them, I like them, I don't want them to help them be rich people. But I don't want to do what they're doing. If I want to be skinny, I'm not going to eat what fat people are eating. This is not hard, is it? You have to think about these things. If you want a marriage, don't go to some guy who's been married 16 times and wrote a book. Find some old couple walking along like this, been married 62 years, and she's holding him up. Find out how he did that. That's worth knowing. Take that guy to lunch. He's got some wisdom. Find winners and mimic what they're doing to win. That's how we become rich. That's how this works. And so when you look at it, you know what the Forbes 400 is? The Forbes 400 is the 400 wealthiest people in North America today. The Forbes 400 were surveyed. They asked the 400 wealthiest people in North America today. Not your broke brother-in-law. Not your beer-drinking buddy with an opinion. They asked the 400 richest people in North America, what's the most important key to building wealth? I mean, inquiring minds want to know this. You know, think about it. What they said was 75% of those replied that the number one way to become wealthy was to stay debt-free. It's the number one key to wealth building. And here's why. Your largest wealth building tool is your income. And when it's not all going out the door with someone else's name on it, you have it to do things like investing. It's your biggest deal. You take an old car payment, you take an old credit card payment, you get rid of a student loan that's been around so long you think it's a pet, and you take those payments and start putting those things into a mutual fund, you end up with money. It is the muscle of your wealth building plan, your income. But when you're handcuffed because it all has someone else's name on it, you're a slave to the lender. Myth, debt is a tool. Truth, the borrower is slave to the lender. Because when you don't have any payments, you have money. You stay in your seat. Oh, think about it. How much could you save, invest, blow, and give if you had absolutely no payments? But you know why people don't, why they don't get out of debt? It's because they've lost their hope. That's why they don't get out of debt. They don't really believe that they can be debt-free.
That morning, I wake up and the pressure of just all the calls the last few days of credit card companies bothering me is just kind of sinking me down, and I just kind of got in the car and drove, and next thing you know, I'm pulling up in the Eagleville. I had this wig and BB gun in the trunk of my car. I shoved the BB gun down into my shorts and walked into the bank. I started to recognize that I had a problem with debt as I got later in college. It started, way back. I found out that I could qualify for this aid, this aid, this aid, and this student loan. And then, I realized that, I can basically supplement an income taking student loans while I'm in school, and I'm always partying.
When there wasn't a party at the fraternity house, there was a party at our house. I mean, it was supply and demand. If there was a demand for fun, Don was there to supply it.
And then afterwards, going to bars or those things, I know that he was always helping out different ones with the tab or meals and those type of things.
It really started to weigh heavier on me as the payments started to outweigh what I was bringing in. I just started getting calls more and more and more because I couldn't make the minimum payments that we had set for these cards, and at the same time I was taking out more cards to where I could pay off other cards. I was probably $30,000 in debt, and I was removed as president of my fraternity, and the depression started to set in. And then to kind of culminate it, I lost a friend in a car accident that was a pledge of ours in the fraternity, and it just started to mount up. At that time, assisted suicide was in the news a lot, and I'm always reading up on the news, and so I found this book that they were advertising, and I bought the book, and it was basically a self-help guide to assisted suicide. Obviously, its intended audience was for people that were already dying, but to me, I was already dead, and I just needed to complete the bodily form of that. Just everything they outlined in the book, I couldn't do, and I felt like a failure again. I walked into the bank, and I noticed two tellers. I noticed the customer standing there, and I basically politely asked the customer to move out of the way, and I step up to the first teller and just ask for the money, and while she's doing that, I approach the second teller and have the same request. And basically, they hand the money to me, and I just kind of walk out, and and walked to my car. And as I'm going to the car, I'd kind of thinking, that was kind of easy. I set the money down on the car seat as I'm climbing in. About that time, I just hear this popping noise. Turns out it was the die pack in the money. And I start to pull away from the bank, and I throw the money out of the car. I just gun it out of town, and can't see, smoke everywhere. Pepper spray is all over me, and I'm just driving. And I just knew it was a straight line, so I just kept driving a straight line. The alarm for the bank goes off in the grocery store across the street. So they had the make of the car, the tag numbers. So as I'm coming back into Murfreesboro, a deputy's car turns around, passes me and turns around, and so I just immediately pull to the side of the road. Once he gets up behind me, I get out of the car, and he recognizes me immediately because my father is currently a private investigator in town, but he used to be the chief of detectives for the Rutherford County Sheriff's Department, which is the department that's arrested me.
I remember getting a phone call that my vehicle tag number had been involved in a bank robbery at Eagleville, Tennessee. I told him the car was at school with Donald. Someone must have stolen it. 15 minutes later, he called back and said Donald had been arrested for bank robbery at Eagleville.
I stayed out there on the side of the road. Basically, we were waiting for the newspaper to get there, so they took my picture, and then I was off and processed.
We hired a lawyer, and then, of course, I got him out on a property bond by putting my property up, and he was released shortly after being booked in.
So my dad picks me up at the police station. We get in the car, and immediately pulling out of the police station, he takes a left when he should have taken a right. We drove around, and probably was only 2 minutes, but it seemed like 50. Just silence, nothing but the little hum of the road and an occasional bump. And finally he breaks the silence, and he looks over and he kind of says, son, if I could take this away from you, I would.
It's not something you can just take care of like I normally do things in the past.
And right then I knew that I had really broken his heart. I had my mom and a couple family members and a couple friends in the car, and we all just kind of made a road trip up there. When I first drove into the facility, is exactly what you would picture as a prison. It's double row razor wire, and it was just very cold when I first drove up. And as they're guiding me through the door, and the door starts to close, Lee Thrasher, one of my good friends, says, "We love you, man." And I just never looked back.
But you know why people why they don't get out of debt? Is because they've lost their hope. That's why they don't get out of debt. They don't really believe that they can be debt-free. That's why they don't get out of debt. It's kind of like when I was growing up, my parents, we moved from the suburbs out to the country. Well, about the time I took off for college is actually when that happened. Now, out in the country in our area, it was like 5 acres. It wasn't like 50,000 acres, okay? But my dad, my little sister got involved in the rodeo over at the high school, in the rodeo club, and she was riding a horse around the barrels for a time. Have you ever seen that? Say yes. Yes. And they bought her a quarter horse to ride the barrels. His name was Bubba. And then they got tired of riding around the barrels, and they decided they were going to enter another event. And that event was kind of like the guys have in rodeo. The guys have an event in rodeo called calf roping. And if you've seen calf roping on ESPN, or if you've ever been to the rodeo or something like that, the cowboy's sitting in the saddle, the calf is released, they ride out after the calf, the lasso goes around the calf, and the horse is taught to stop and start backing up, cowboy ties off, jumps from the horse, runs his hand along the line, calf is running, has no idea, slack's running out. About the time the slack runs out, that head pops, cowboy uses that backward momentum, flips that calf upside down, ties his feet together, and holds his hands up for a time. Have you seen that event? Say yes. Yes. Well, the girls have a similar event, only they don't flip and rope calves because they're too big, the calves are, so the girls flip and rope goats. Now, I know it sounds kind of funny, but they were real serious about it. Hat down over the eyes, serious about being a goat roper. I mean, it's a big deal. Goat roping is a real sport. I mean, they were real serious about it. So we had to buy her a goat to practice on. And since we were going to practice on him, we named him Practice the Goat. And so what happened in the Tennessee summer heat with the humidity standing in the field about this tall, I saw him out there with the goat. They grabbed old Practice by the ears. They gave him a little boot because she's on the horse ready to go after him, right? And he's running out through there. He's going, man, this is great. I'm not a goat. I'm a gazelle. I am gone, baby. About that time, the rope goes around his neck. He has no idea. She ties off. Bubba starts backing up. She runs from Bubba down that line. That backward momentum, that slack runs out. She grabs that goat, flips him upside down, ties his little feet together. He says, what happened? I thought I was a gazelle. I must be a goat. I got to tell you the truth. They did that to that goat 15, 20 times a day, all summer long. To the point that where they would flip and time, they wore the grass off and there was a bare spot. Now, if you've ever been around goats, they're not real smart. But eventually, old Practice began to catch on. I saw him finally. He's running out through there. He saw that bare spot and he went, stop, pain right here. He finally got where he'd run out there, stop and lay down. We told her if we could get him to tie his own feet together, she could win every event. You know what happened to old Practice? Old Practice lost his hope, didn't he? He got beat up one too many times, and he just quit. He just went out there and laid down. It's kind of a funny story, but really, when you think about it in perspective of our lives, it's kind of sad. Because I meet people and they run out there and they lay down, don't they? Say, oh, you're always going to have a car payment. Little man just can't get ahead. Just forget it, you can't make it. In the greatest land the world has ever known. Plus, Practice had to go back to the goat pen, didn't he? And the other goats are going, you're not going to make it. That's just the way it is. Take it easy, man. Don't work while you're at work. Don't try to be a winner. Mediocrity, we're just goats, man. Just take it. Just go out there and lay down. That's just how it is. You're always going to have a car payment. You can't be a student without a loan. You can't have a master without a card. That's the way it is, Practice. Get over it. I got to tell you, though, I'm the goat that got away. I'm over here the other side of the bare spot. It's not really a bare spot. It's more like a mountain of dead, isn't it? And I've got lights over here and radios playing, music playing. We're throwing ropes across, shining, sending the internet over there. And we're doing all this stuff, and we hear people climbing up the other side. Boom, 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 boom. We hear them on the other side of that wall. They call in, they're screaming, how do I do this, Dave? What do I do, man? I'm trying it. Man, I'm doing this stuff. I'm kicking it. And see that head pop up occasionally. And occasionally one of them will drop off over here, and they call in on our talk radio show. And they tell us, Dave, I make $62,000 a year, but Dave, I've been busting it. I've been killing it. I mean, I've done everything you said to do. It's been hard, but man, I'm debt free.